So you're taking whatever Mother Nature gave you and you're then making something out of it that you want to share with the world.
What is your ultimate goal with your career, and where do you see yourself in maybe like 5-10 years from now?
I've been super into wine, and it just was so fascinating to me when I started going out tasting with friends in LA. I did have in my sights at some point to one day be a CEO of a company. Some of my best roles that I've loved were where I had the opportunity to design and create something from scratch and launch it to the world.
If you had to choose between happiness or success, which would you choose?
The problem I found is that you kind of need some success in order to support your happiness.
Welcome back to 101 Ways Out. I'm your host, Vanessa Juby, and today we're sitting down with Sarah Lyons. Sarah was a high-flying corporate executive at amazing companies like DIRECTV and HBO Max. But for a while now, she's been focused on building her own vineyard, Lyons Vineyard, with her husband, Sky. And I think you're going to really like this episode because Sarah talks about the identity struggle that comes from leaving corporate behind and not really knowing who you are, pouring herself into her hobbies, and being able to build something from scratch. You'll also hear the through line for her entire life, which is all around creation and creativity. Stay till the end because I want to give you an update on what's going on with Sarah and how she's been finding more success for her vineyard. I can't wait for you to hear this. And you'll also hear as you listen that Sarah and I have a unique connection that goes back several years. See you soon. All right. Well, I am here with Sarah Lyons. I'm very excited to be chatting with her today. She and I crossed paths many years ago now at DIRECTV. I worked on her team. She is a media executive and Vigneron. Hopefully I said that right. Winemaker, winery owner, super into wine and very knowledgeable. So she has these two kind of sides of her personality in addition to being a mom and a wife and all of the other things. And so happy to talk with you and kind of see where you are in your life journey, Sarah. So why don't we start with just kind of where are you in general at this particular moment in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now I'm fully focused on getting our winery brand launched and off the ground. We just launched, but it's been quite a significant amount of work to get to the point of launch. And then once you launch, you have to very much incubate that new product, new offering, and new customer base. So that's what I've been focused on most recently. Although I do have one foot into, putting out feelers for my next corporate media gig. So it's definitely a tale of two cities, but yeah, mostly wine right now.
So fantastic. I think that's really interesting too, because I remember years ago when I first met you and just learning about your passion for wine and your interest in it and your education in wine, then you I never, you don't really know what someone's passion is and how far it's going to go. But the fact that you then ended up getting your own vineyard and making your own wine now is just so incredibly cool to see, on top of being a senior leader at these massive companies. So what is your ultimate goal, I guess, if you don't mind, go a little bit out of order? What is your ultimate goal with your career, and where do you see yourself in maybe like 5-10 years from now?
Yeah. So I've usually been fairly clear-sighted about my future and my goals. And honestly, the whole wine thing has had a lot of twists and turns that questions my clear-sightedness a couple of times. But normally I feel very confident in where I'm going and plotting myself towards that path. And to answer your question more specifically, so I've always had in my head, I'm career driven and want to continue to work my way up and have more success in my corporate career. And I did have in my sights at some point to one day be a CEO of a company. I also still have a bucket list to sit on a public board. So that was always in my head on one side of the fence. And then on the other side of the fence, I've been incredibly passionate about wine ever since right since I graduated college. One really is into wine in college. It's very hard. You don't have any money to be, but yeah, I've been super into wine, and it just was so fascinating to me when I started going out tasting with friends in LA when I first moved to LA and learning about it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm learning more about not just the wine, but when you learn about wine, you learn about who made the wine and where it comes from, and the reason why it tastes is because of climate and landscape and history and culture and tradition. And then you start to learn about the history of winemaking in that place. And so you really start to learn all these, different facets about geography, geology, climatology, that I never really was interested in previously, but it's like wine got me interested in all that stuff. And there's so much to learn. So I kept learning more about wine because I was just fascinated by it. and you get to taste and drink it at the same time. So like, what better homework is that, right? And so I was, always progressing in my career on one side and then learning about wine on the other side. And I met my husband, and he has a background in wine. His father was a vineyard manager. And so he kind of grew up around it a little bit, and he too had an interest. And so then we got to a point where we're like, okay, well, one day we'd like to actually do something with this wine thing. And we really wanted to do something with his dad, because his dad was building vineyards for other people and had moved from California to North Carolina. We wanted his dad back in California with us because we really loved his dad. And so we were like, let's try and start something together. And then unfortunately, his dad passed away from lung cancer. And so we couldn't actually make that leap with him. But my husband and I still, felt like we wanted to do something both for ourselves and our future, and a tribute to his dad. And so, again, two things kind of going simultaneously. Opportunity came around where we found a property that had a couple of acres of grapes on it. And we purchased that to start. And then figured, okay, we're going to plant more grapes as fast as possible and sell grapes to other winemakers to make wine. We'll wait to make our own wine till someday down the road. And then I had a break in my career for a moment where I was between jobs, and I was like, oh, well, this is a great time to make some wine since I've got some time. Now we can actually, take that next step. So we did that. And then I went back to work. And then, some time had passed to get some things taken care of. And then now we're at the point to launch the wine brand. But the wine brand always was meant to be, let's get this going. It's a long-term business. I mean, it takes, if you decide you want to plant grapes, from the point of deciding to the grapes being able to be harvested for wine is about 5 years. And then once you harvest those grapes, if it's a red wine, it's going to be at least another 12 months, if not 18 months, till it's in bottle and ready to sell. So it's a very long time horizon. So we figured we got to get the wine business going. And the idea was, once we're at the point of our corporate careers where we're ready to retire, we can hop over and manage our wine business full time, because we're not the type of people to just retire and do nothing. We have tons of hobbies and tons of projects. And so that was going to be, what we're going to do in retirement. And yeah, so I don't know. And then life just takes you on all these different twists and turns. And, we kind of got to a point where we determined we needed to launch the actual wine brand sooner versus later. But I still am keeping one foot in the corporate career. So I don't know, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And it's always interesting too, to understand how people envision their future, how things change. But also, I think a lot of folks are not clear on where they want to go or where they want to end up, and having that plan for after we retire, we know this is where we want to be and what we want to do. So you having that clarity, and you and your husband having that clarity together of having the vineyard and making wine and doing things like that, I think is pretty unique and really special that you guys had that vision. Though there are many different paths that are happening now that you weren't anticipating, but just knowing that that's where you eventually wanted to be, I think is really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you say that. I think part of it is both of us have always had so many different hobbies. And so we've always known what we enjoy. And I truly think trying a lot of things when you're younger and having a lot of different activities and hobbies will really set you up for later understanding what is going to make me happy once I'm done working. And some people don't want to do anything, and that's totally cool too. But, for those people like us that you do feel like you want to have something that still drives your passion, I think starting hobbies and activities earlier really helps that.
Oh, that's a really good point. How do you, if you don't mind me tangentially just asking about that, how do you feel like this winemaking hobby kind of has grown from what you did when you were younger, the different things you tried? Or is it just something that's totally different, but you had the open-mindedness from it?
It's interesting. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it taps into certain facets of my personality, and which is another thing I've just learned more about over the course of time, both in my career and in this space, in that, what are the building blocks that really drive me? And creating something is one of those things. And that creating something has manifested itself in a number of ways throughout my life. And it's not until you get older that you put the pieces together and realize, oh, well, these different things, really the root of them is creating something. So when I was growing up, one of my other hobbies is art. So I paint and draw and sculpt. And I took art classes as a kid and loved it. If I came home from junior high and I was upset about whatever happened with my, mean girl day, not that I was the mean girl, somebody else was the mean girl, and I was upset, I would draw or paint. and that would make me feel better. That creation, right? And then I minored in art in college because I loved it so much. And it's kind of continued to be a hobby of mine, was creation. And then in my career, like some of my best roles that I've loved were where I had the opportunity to design and create something from scratch and launch it to the world. And so, I had that opportunity with one of the apps that I worked on. And that creation, again, like ideation, like what is it going to be? And oh my God, the world's my oyster. And I could figure out who I'm making it for and what they might want and how can I make it different and unique and special. And that creation just fueled me. And the same thing in wine, like you're taking whatever Mother Nature gives you out of these grapes throughout the year that you really have no control over. And by the way, I think you always come up with your most creative ideas when you've got some sort of parameter you have to work within, or like a little bit of confinement actually makes you more creative. So you're taking whatever Mother Nature gave you and you're then making something out of it that you want to share with the world. And then even better, what's great about wine is it's different every year. Like, the best wine's not like soda where it's the same soda everywhere. The best wine is a wine that totally is different every year depending on what happened. And that's like the beauty of it. It's like a time capsule. It's very cool.
I love that. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how the climate and the region and everything changes the wine. Totally. And so every year there are going to be variables. That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to when you were a kid and you're growing up. What was your upbringing like? And tell me about your school experience.
Let's see. So I mostly grew up in Washington State. Like, how far back do you want me to go?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Because I feel like when we're kids, there are things that affect us and influence us and kind of drive us to be more entrepreneurial or more, staying in our own lane. So all these things that kind of make us who we are. So if there are things that you remember from childhood that like many people I've spoken with, they say, well, for this first 8 years of my life, I had a really idyllic childhood. I lived at this cul-de-sac. There were fireflies everywhere. We trick-or-treated for Halloween. And then my parents moved to Paris for work or something.
Oh, okay.
That was a big change, right?
Nah.
So what would you, maybe you just lived in the same house in the same street and all that your whole life, but what were those things that you really remember that kind of inspired who you are?
Yeah, interesting. Well, so I was born in Italy, although that didn't really as a younger person, I probably don't even know where it was. So it didn't really matter then, although now I have this affinity for it because of it. So
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's great.
I only lived there a year and then moved back to the States after that. But so I mostly grew up in Washington State. I don't know, kind of, had a fairly normal childhood. My dad was in the Navy though. And so he was always gone because he was traveling the world. And he worked in intelligence. And so often we didn't even know or couldn't know where he was. I'd get random postcards from random places every now and again. I'm like, okay. But on the flip side, I had a really great relationship with him as well. Especially, as I was growing up and got older, I could always call him and talk to him about what was going on at school or friends or whatever. And he would always give me really amazing advice. So he was definitely a huge support system, even though he wasn't there. And then I was mostly an only child, although my dad did remarry at one point, and I have a half sister, but I never lived with her. She and I also have a good relationship now. We're fairly separated in age. We have a great relationship, but point being, I didn't have a sibling around growing up. So I also think that kind of contributed to my creativity and imagination, because back when there were no screens and TV was not even, it was like clunk dial or whatever. You had to figure out how to entertain yourself if you're by yourself. And so I would, do things on my own, make up games. I'd go tromping through the woods or climbing trees and riding my bike around the neighborhood. I'd make friends with all the neighbor kids because that's, who I could go play with. And so it caused me to be really independent, I think, more creative. And I'm never afraid to go anywhere by myself ever. That's totally fine. If I'm traveling for work in a city that I've never been in, I don't want to just not see the city. So I'll go out to dinner and sit at the bar by myself with my iPad, and I'll be looking on my iPad by myself. But at least I'll go out and walk around and see something. So So I don't know. I think that's kind of how the childhood thing contributed. I didn't like Washington State. No offense to anyone that lives in Washington, only because it's so overcast and it's now it's better with global warming. That's actually more sunnier. But when I lived there, it was dark and overcast and wet constantly. And that, for some reason, just with my personality, really got me down. And so it got to a point
Yeah.
where I went to college in Arizona because I wanted the exact opposite. I wanted sunshine. Like, I have to get out of this rain cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a massive change.
Right.
Let me ask you just two more quick questions. What about did your mom have a career, or was she more of a stay-at-home mom?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So she had a career. She's always had, well, not always, for a long time, she had roles in a lot of, I guess I'd call it like public service type organizations. So she was director of the local library for a while. She was director of Planned Parenthood for a while. She later on in her career was director of YWCA, that YWCA, I don't know if people know about that organization.
Yeah.
An organization that takes in women and their children who come from situations that are very dangerous and not good, and houses them and gets them back on their feet to be able to get out from a bad situation or whatever it might be. So she's had a lot of those types of roles. She also worked for a congresswoman at one point in time too. So, and she also later in her career did HR for a couple of corporations. So that's kind of the vein, I guess, of her work. Yeah. And then my dad was in the Navy and then retired from the Navy and went into kind of independent contracting with the government. So neither of them were in any sort of field that could help me in my career journey. Yeah.
That's so interesting and really impressive to me to think about, like, growing up with a parent that is dedicating their time to doing things that are like trying to help make the world a better place in a lot of ways, both of your parents, it sounds like. And then do you have any memories of events that happened when you were little that you felt like were really significant to you? Like, was there like a moment or a memory that like comes up for you often, or not really?
I don't know. Not so much when I was younger necessarily. It's more so like earlier in my career, there were things that kind of shaped and changed things. But I guess when I was younger, it was more so, it's kind of back to the activities question. In that activities I did would give me lessons, confidence, more of an understanding of how to work or interact with people. Those things more so shaped me. So I did art, like I mentioned. I played tennis for many years and I actually still love to play tennis. Oh my God, I love it. Tennis is like for me, for my personality. It's exercise, which I love. I'm very into fitness. It's that kind of discipline of exercise, but it's also such a mental game. It's like really a mental game where you focus, and you one day you can be great because you're focused, and the next day you cannot because you're not focused. And it's truly about like focus. So it's like the best therapeutic type of thing for me because it's so zen. It's like your mind is just goes off of anything you're worrying about, and it's just super focused on a game, and you're getting exercise. So I played great for years. I ran track. I cheerleaded, and then I took every kind of lesson possible. I played the violin for many years. I even like took hula dancing at one point in time. Like, I don't know, a number of other things I can't even remember, but just tons of activities just kind of shape you.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. And that's really insightful too, because I think the idea of having things that you're interested in, and it goes back to your hobbies also. I mean, this is a perfect example of what you were saying, but having things that you're interested in, and then having the agency from a parent, I assume, to go ahead and go follow those interests and have the support to do that, I think is really important. And I think allows us to feel like, we have agency, independence, autonomy, the ability to like make a change in the world and do things that matter.
Yeah. I think that's
so. I think a lot of those things as kids, it really does shape our identities in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Some parents are not able to pay for those types of activities, and that's harder on the child. And I was fortunate, and some parents are not willing or can't drive their kid here and there, or there's other things that get in the way. I was fortunate enough that my mom always said, you can take whatever lesson you want. But the stipulation was, you have to research it. You have to call them up and talk to them about what the cost is and what days it might be. And you come to me with all the information, and then you can do it. But I had to be the one to come on and research it. So that was her like way of like, getting me comfortable with doing that type of thing.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm going to use that with my kid.
I know. It's pretty good.
It's great. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That's inspiring. a woman that I spoke with, her family, her mom was Hungarian. And so they would fly to Hungary every summer. So she would spend time there and then they would do a little European trip, just jaunt somewhere after visiting the family. So for her whole task was leading up to the summer vacation, figuring out where that trip was going to be. And so she would bring all these brochures. Yeah. So she would get the brochures from the different travel agent offices and put together a little presentation and show her parents.
Oh,
and
I
they were
love
like,
it. That's
all right,
amazing.
well, but yeah, isn't that so cool?
Yeah, that's
I love
really
that. I love the
cool.
way that parents can like shape their kids in these positive ways. That's so neat.
Oh, I love that. That's very cool.
What kind of expectations do you feel like your parents had for you as you were growing up? Like, was there an expectation that you were going to go to college or major in a certain thing or anything like that?
Yeah, it was always when you go to college, not if. Like there was no question that I was going to college. They tried to kind of influence on major, so like, oh, you should go into engineering, you should be a lawyer or a doctor, all the usual. But they weren't really pressuring that or anything. And also they did leave it up to me where I wanted to go. But again, they wanted me to research, but it was definitely when I went to college, not if. And then when I did decide to choose my major and I really wanted to do art, they were like, you can't major in art. So they were kind of trying to shape it a little bit, but yeah, I think that was a big, I guess, influence or predestined path, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
The other thing though, that I was super fortunate that they were not only supportive of, but encouraged was study abroad. And so I went and studied abroad in Spain my junior year, and that was the most amazing experience in the world. And then traveled around Europe, for months thereafter as well, which they also supported. And that also is such a good life experience. And really, like it as a young person, it taught you and again, this is pre-screens, like we were using maps. I was getting so old, it just sucked. But so if I can find my way around in a country where the words are not even letters I know, and I can find my way around with a paper map, I can pretty much figure out how to do anything I need to do.
Yes.
There was no Google Translate.
No, that's such a great experience. And it's so easy now. Oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous.
Oh my God, easy. I know. You just hold your phone up and it scans the thing and tells you what it is. We had none of that.
Right.
And when I was traveling around, not nearly as many people spoke English.
Right.
It was drastically different than today. Even in Spain, it wasn't that long ago that they were under dictatorship rule with Franco. And so when I was there, you still saw the effects of that Iberian Peninsula being cut off from the rest of Europe. And it had opened up and, things were evolving, but it was not like it is today. And so many people did not speak English. And then we went to Prague, and Prague at that point in time also had just opened up. And so there again, it was like a time warp. It was really crazy. And it's so different today. People speak English everywhere today.
You know that moment when you realize that you can't keep living the way that you've been living? Probably heard several of my guests talk about that already. If that resonates with you and you're feeling like you're in that moment, you're in luck. I've created a 30-day program that's going to help you become unstuck, reconnect with your joy, reconnect with yourself, and reconnect with your values. We're going to work together to figure out your next step, your vision, and your path forward. This is an invitation for you to live the life of your dreams that truly lights you up. Visit 101waysout.com to get started.
That's so amazing to go to those places when they're going through this massive transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we just got back from Europe, and it was so easy to get around everywhere using our phones and figure out what train to take here and there. And everyone speaks English, and if they don't, you can use Google Translate, like you're talking about. And I was just I had gone 20 years before and did the whole backpacking thing. And I was looking at my kid, you have no idea. You will never know.
I know.
The struggle was real. And if you missed your train, you're just stuck and you're waiting.
Totally.
And it's just
you take
so
your train
different,
to a wrong city, which that happened.
Yes.
And you're like, what city are we in? Shoot. Where did we mess up that train transfer? And they're like, oh
my God.
I guess we'll stay the night here. Let's go find a hostel.
Yeah. Yeah. You found something cool you would never have otherwise discovered.
And we'll figure it out tomorrow.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward. You ended up graduating from college, having like a phenomenal career, senior executive at DirecTV, which was then I guess Time Warner, which was HBO Warner. I don't really know all the name changes that it had, but like you had a killer career. I was like amazing, just amazing, all the things that you did.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know you're still kind of in the midst of figuring out your next step and taking another corporate job. Like, at what point do you feel like you're going to be ready to retire? Or is there something that you're waiting for? I mean, you mentioned becoming a CEO of a company. Is that still a goal, or what's your hope?
That's definitely still in the back of my head, although more learnings about myself over the course of time. I'm now at a place though where the people I work with are almost or definitely as important as what I'm creating. Whereas before I might have accepted I'm creating something and it's kind of okay that I'm, working with a group that maybe doesn't see eye to eye or is, not kind of in the same headspace I am. But now it's more important than ever that I'm working with a group of people that I really like working with. Life is short and you want to be sure you're enjoying what you're doing, surrounding yourself with positivity and goodness. And I just can't, I can't put myself in a situation again not that my situation isn't bad, but generally I just don't want to put myself in a situation with dynamics that are not good. And so that's always in my mind as I'm looking for the next step. And then to more pointedly to your question, it's like, if I find that next role that's got the great dynamics, I mean, we had amazing dynamics with my peer set and team and group that we had working on HBO Max. Like, that was, all of us look back on that so fondly because it was like outstanding. And we got so much done. The reason why we got so much done in such a short amount of time is because we all just gelled and fed off each other in a positive way and just did it. And so finding that again would be like the pinnacle. And I would probably try to ride that for a while. It's so important. So it's almost like what becomes the most meaningful changes over time, both as you kind of age in your career and as you learn more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll ask you maybe a slightly different question from any of the ones I've written down, just because you're at a different place and you haven't decided you're leaving. You're not like doing the vineyard full time yet. One of the things that I want to give you a little preamble and then see if this even resonates with you, because you could be a very different person and like know Vanessa. That is not the way I think of things. So my husband and I have been married for 15 years. We've been together for 21 years. So we've had a long relationship. It's been a long time. And when we the first couple of years of us dating, we're like, we should set some goals. And I literally found one of the pieces of paper as I was cleaning out my basement just in the last few months. Like, we wrote when we were 26 years old. So it's crazy, It was so cool. I'm like, oh my gosh, like so much of the stuff that we wrote down.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, we did these things. Like, whoa, we were true to ourselves. It was really cool. But I remember back in that time, we set these goals for ourselves of, some of these things are definitely not going to come true, but just because like life changes and you change, but we'll still see. But like, we wanted to retire in our 40s. We wanted to live on a barge in Europe. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but who knows? We had a certain number that we wanted to make in our retirement / wealth / whatever. Like, if we get to this point, we're good. So we had all of these things, but we also didn't expect to have a kid at that time, right? So everything changes a little bit. But we had all of those things that were like, okay, this is what our goals are. Did you and your husband ever like set that goal, or do you for yourself have that, like, when I get to this point, like financially, I'm done, I'm good, I'm set, I don't need to work anymore? Or is that just not part of your DNA and you're like, no, I'm going to keep going?
No, it's a good question. We've had that conversation many times, and what that goal is just changes.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what
it changes as you
what new things become important or not important. And so it's changed up and down, honestly, a bit. Like, it's not just gone up, like it's been up and down on what that number is. We've always been very fiducially conscientious though. So like, we're big savers, and we consciously manage that savings and the growth of that savings over time. So even though the end goal kind of has shifted, like, we've continually tried to chart ourselves down a path to have optionality. So we all, it's definitely a piece of conversation constantly. And I would say that's a healthy thing. If it's a positive conversation. Obviously it's tough on the other end of it if there is nothing there and you're paycheck to paycheck, which a lot of people are. Like, a lot of people just are not fortunate and have had misfortune of different wealth events or lack thereof that have put them in a bad
Yeah.
situation. And that's way tougher. I mean, at least we were fortunate to be fairly, successful quickly in our careers.
Yeah.
Savings was a concept that we could actually start to do. But I mean, I would definitely say if you can start saving as young as possible. And I know people say that and it sounds very cliche, but it's very true. So like even with our son who's 12, we were talking to him about credit card debt, honestly, when he was 10. And granted, he's good. He likes
That's
math.
wonderful.
He's good at math, but like he got it. And we're like, yeah, he's like, so how do credit cards make money? I'm like, well, they make money on both ends. I'm like, they make money from the merchant. They get a percentage of that, whatever you buy. And they make money by you not paying your bill. And oh, by the way, then you're going to owe them another 15 to 30% now each month of what you don't pay. So you always have to pay your bill. He's like, oh, okay. And now, even now, about a year ago or so, he was like, Mom, I earned some money and I don't know what to do with it, because they don't watch commercials anymore. Kids don't. You probably know. Like, so he has no idea what he wants to ask for his birthday, because he doesn't like watch.
Oh, wow.
There's nothing. So he's like, I don't know what I want. There's nothing I want to do with it. I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, let's save it. Let's put it into an account and let it earn some money while you figure out, save for something bigger. He's like, okay. And so I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what, if however much money you want me to put into an investment account for you, I'll match it. And so
That's
we did
wonderful.
a little investment in our little stock trading account. And I bought him a AI index fund that he's
that's cool.
he's now made 30% on in the last year.
Wow.
And I know, he's doing well. And then I bought him some Nike stock because I was like, what's a brand that you know and love that have an affinity for? He wears Nike shoes all the time. I'm like, oh, it's at its low. Let's buy some stock. And so on that, he's made, I don't know, I can't remember, but last I looked, 14%. And so it's like, but anyway, just teaching that mindset, I think, is really good, because the earlier you can start doing that, the more optionality you'll have later as to, am I still enjoying what I'm doing and want to keep doing it? Or do I want to pivot and do something else?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that so much. And I love the way that you tied it to his own interests and made it come to life. That's really cool. Speaking of optionality, I have a friend of mine who's 10 years younger than me, and her goal, she has a certain retirement number she wants to hit. And her goal when she gets there is to work at a Hallmark store. Like, that is her dream. She just wants to be surrounded by all the Hallmark goodies and the positive vibes and like the candles. Like, you do that.
Oh
I love that
that's
so much for you.
I love it. I get it though. A lot of people that I talk to that are really into wine want to work in a tasting room. Like that's their retirement gig. Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
I know.
It's fun. It's something you enjoy. Very cool. As you've thought about kind of preparing for your the next stage, I'm focusing on retirement just again because I know you're going to do another corporate gig. As you think about when that is coming up for you, how are you preparing for that mentally, financially? Like, what is all of that? Is it a lot of planning that's gone into it for you, or is it more just kind of taking things one step at a time?
No, it's a lot. It's a lot of planning, I guess I'd say, and mental exercises as well. Part of that, because I've had a couple months in between, some of my roles, you're almost forced to think about some of those things. Like, one of the big things that I really wrestled with when I left Warner Media was, who am I that I don't have this job and I'm not in that role? Like, what do I define myself as now? And what's my worth? What's my importance?
Right.
Like, what do I give to the world? What do I give to a team? Nothing. And that mental shift was really hard, because that was the first time I had not worked ever. And so it was the very first time I'm like, I don't know who I am.
And that's interesting though, especially given, like you mentioned, you have hobbies, you play tennis, you have other things that you're interested in, art and everything else, but that was it is such a defining part of your identity.
Yeah. If you're career driven for most of your life, like, that defines you. And even like when you meet people, new people, they're like, oh, what do you do for a living? Like, that's like the first question on people's mouths. And so that was a huge shift that I can only imagine for those that haven't had to face that question. Retirement might also drive that same question. And it's okay to not have that be who you are, for sure. Like, you should be other things. Absolutely. It just is like, it was a shock to the brain, right?
Absolutely.
So there's, planning in that respect. There's also like, I make a conscious point to keep a schedule, so when I was in between jobs, I still got up at the same time. I still worked out right when I got up before breakfast. I still had my breakfast, did the morning routine, like you keep a schedule because I don't know, to me, that structure helps. And your retirement schedule might be a little different too, but like keeping a schedule, I still would keep a calendar and calendar myself things to do. And, and to me that helps. So I think it's these like transition things are probably going to be important in retirement as well. And then
absolutely.
From a like financial planning perspective, sure, it's certainly like tons of planning goes into it. I got all the boring stuff from assessing health insurance and is whatever mortgage rate that I'm paying, is it worth paying off that mortgage, or is it better to invest the money now because my mortgage rate's so low I can make more money in the market? Like all these questions for sure come up. And so we have a number of meetings with a financial planner to project out like where, based on everything we have right now and based on where the markets are headed and, whatever yield we have, like what does that net us in 5 years? Where does that net us in 10 years? What if we need to pull out X amount of money out of that for unforeseen whatever, or for this, this project here? What does that then mean? And so all those scenarios are like you would in any business, you should run those scenarios for yourself,
Absolutely. That's really great advice. I love that you brought up the financial planning and working with a planner and thinking about like, what if things don't go exactly as you hope they will?
Totally.
The identity thing, I think is such a really interesting topic. And I know I struggled with it too when I stopped working in corporate and started focusing on my startup full time. Like it took me way longer than I thought it would to feel comfortable with doing something different, I mean, even you, like you have a vineyard, you're making wine, like, but it's such an identity shift from being a corporate or just, an employee of a company and part of a team. And I was reading something the other day about Denmark, and it's related, I promise. They just have such a different focus on life and work-life balance. And not even that, it's just, they're not defined by their careers as much. Like, the first question, like you said, if I were to meet you on the street and we were chatting, I'd say, oh, well, what do you do? Well, for them, they say, what are your hobbies? Like, what's your hobby? That. Like, that's the first question.
Yay.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, so then you're defined by more of the things that you choose to focus on. Or, I mean, not that you're not choosing your career, but like you're bigger than just that.
Yes. I love that. And it's a more of a window into your personality,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I just love to go hiking and be in nature and didn't take photos and make videos. Like, that's what I love. Like, that's my hobby. You know what I mean? Like, and how much do you light up when you talk about that sort of passion?
Exactly.
Versus, well, I run a digital team for me, right? Like, I run a digital team at this investment company. It's cool, right?
Right.
It's like a little different.
Yeah. You get so much more almost invested in the relationship you create with someone when you're talking about your passions and shared passions. I totally agree with that. And travel is some of the best medicine, or, gives you a really good reflection of how other cultures think about these things. And more often than not, I find I really gravitate more towards how other cultures approach it. Like, yeah. I mean, they live.
It'd be so nice.
Life.
It'd be so nice.
Life is short, right? Like, it really is. And so what are you going to remember at the end of the day? Are you going to remember who you had an argument with in a corporate board, corporate meeting of the financial team? Or are you going to remember, that trip you took with your son, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Well, especially for us as moms, we're seeing our kids grow up so fast. Yeah.
Totally.
Thank you for that conversation. That was really fun. Is there anything... is there anything that you wish you had known while you were still in your corporate role that you would have maybe done things differently now? I mean, I know you're running your vineyard now. Is there anything that you wish you had known that before you left corporate and went out and did this, or no? I'm not sure that question makes as much sense for kind of where you are, but and if it doesn't, we can skip it.
No, there's things I'm fortunate that, like, I'm glad I had the point of view I did, or glad I did what I did. I think at some point along my career journey, someone was like, take every recruiter call ever, even if you're not, even if it may not be something for you, always take the call and talk to them, introduce yourself, get to know them. And if you later say, hey, I don't think that role is quite right for me, no worries. Or even if you're super happy in your role you're in, always take the recruiter call. And that was like super great advice that I took all throughout my whole career, even when I was super happy, because then you meet all these contacts along the way. And then if later, you like, gosh, how do I get back? Or, I want to find something next. You have now you've got a good group of friends, comrades, people in the industry that you can reach out to, or even just sounding boards for things. And so I thought that was a really good advice. I don't know. So things like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you keep in touch with those, like the recruiters and things that have come your way? That's cool.
Totally.
I think we talked about your ultimate goal, but maybe I'll ask you this question again and see if there's a different angle to it. Do you have a plan or ultimate vision for what you want your life to look like?
I was trying to think of different from kind of the prior discussion. I don't know. I mean, it's more nebulous. Like that part's less clear than the actual kind of tangible things, and it's more nebulous. But just in terms of, want to wake up on Monday and not be upset that it's Monday. Want to not wish away 5/7 of my week
in a job that's not the right fit, or with a culture that's not great.
Yeah. Want to be present with my son's life when I'm with my son doing something. And so like we're enjoying the thing together. I'm not worried about something else and my head's not there. It's all those those tangible things.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had to choose between happiness or success, which would you choose? And has your answer changed over time?
That's a great question. The problem I found is that you kind of need some success in order to support your happiness, and not even need money to be happy, but like some of the things that would enable you to free your stress level or free your brain from worry. Like you have to have had some success. At least I found for me, I've had to have some success in order to like fund my ability to step away or fund my ability to do something different on a Monday, And so that's why I've been doing this balance. Because you kind of have to have both.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For me, I used to always, when I was young, because this is a question that's like, I really debated, like, should I even put this question in this list? Because it was something that my friends and I used to talk a lot about in high school. And I'm like, that's a million years ago. We're very different people. But I kept it in because I was just so curious about what people would say. I know for me, like my focus became success almost as soon as I started working. And I was like, I got to be successful. Like that's the most important thing.
Totally.
Let's grind it out,
Yes. And that's how I was when I was younger too. It was all about the success.
Yeah. Well, and then to your point though, like once you have a certain amount of success, at least for me, I guess I'll speak for myself, you're able to do a lot more, like not worried about money and bills, whatever, like everything's covered. For me, I got to this point where, okay, I got the next job or the next promotion or the next, salary. And I would look at myself and realize that I wasn't happy. Like it wasn't making me happy that I had achieved those things, like I should be like, maybe that moment I was happy, but like the grand scheme of things, it wasn't really satisfying. Yeah. And so then I've like slowly made the shift of, well, maybe it's not happiness, but maybe it's contentment or something like that, where I'm not chasing that anymore. I'm just like allowing myself to have time to do the things where I am able to be present with my son and explore the world and go on vacations and trips. And that's something I'm still battling with, because this year we've traveled more than we ever have in a single year. And we're still, we're not done with the year. We still have all these trips that we're going to be taking. And I'm like, am I like overdoing it? Is that irresponsible? Come on, Vanessa. But anyway, that's the background story for that question.
Irresponsible, I think. I mean, those are priceless moments that you'll have with you forever. Time with your family together, like that is just everything. And so anyway, I don't think there's a chance of overdoing that at all. Do it more.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah. I'm taking that to heart.
Yes, please do. Please do. I know. Travel is and like, if you think about it, you don't want to save all the travel till you're 80 and can't like walk very well. Like you want to feel like you're young and active and could go hiking and be outside and take pictures,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What's the most liberating decision that you've been able to make since you have left corporate and in living the life that you're living now that you wouldn't have been able to make otherwise?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, definitely like now I do enjoy my Mondays. Like I do have good things and exciting things to work on Mondays. And not that I, never did in corporate life either, but, it's kind of, I guess like what I'd say is I'm really enjoying running my own business. Like, and I'm determining the direction of what I'm doing and where it's headed. And I'm thriving off of idea generation at any moment in the day, and then I can go execute whatever that idea is really quickly. Like that's been really great. Yeah, definitely enjoying that, which is different. So it's not a decision necessarily, but just kind of a mind frame. Yeah, and then I think to your earlier point, you can kind of achieve that mind frame even if you are in a corporate job by not putting so much pressure on yourself for success. Because sometimes, and I did this to myself earlier in my career, I was putting so much pressure on myself. It wasn't pressure that was making me perform any better. Like I would have performed just as well at work either way, but it was like self-inflicted stress almost because I was stressing myself out so much by applying additional pressure. And so I do think if you get in that right mental state, you could be in a corporate role and not drive yourself crazy. I actually found that, I think you and I talked about this at one point a long time ago, when I came back from maternity leave, that actually was a huge pressure reliever for myself, because I kind of was like, dude, if I can deal with this newborn baby at home, I can deal with a crazy executive that I need to deal with at work. And so I was just kind of like, let's talk about it. We're good. You're like in a different headspace. And so like that can everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it changes the way you think about what's important and what's stressful. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
That's right. I remember that conversation. I loved that insight so much.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people that are trying to figure out what to do with their lives?
I guess I would say try to like soul seek about yourself and what makes you happy or drives you. Yeah. And if you can get back to that root of, what is the underlying foundation of something that can make me feel good about things, then tap into that and what flavors that can manifest in. But how you soul seek is totally different depending on who you are. And do you talk to your friends? Do you talk to someone, not a friend that doesn't even know you, that's got an objective opinion? Do you go travel and see what other people are doing? Do you meet up with different groups in your city around different things? There's so many meetups nowadays. Like there's so many ways to meet people. Pick up something new that you've never done before, but go meet people. I don't know. There's different ways to kind of seek that out, but I definitely think understanding that is kind of the root of everything, because then you can build on it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Thank you. All right, what is saving your life right now?
I don't know, like loving my family. Family is everything. Yeah, being with my family.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. If people want to find out more about you and follow your journey, where you go, and learn more about your wine, what's the best way?
Yes. Well, shameless plug for our winery and vineyard. It's lyonsvineyard.com, LYONS vineyard.com. Check it out. Yeah. There's our whole backstories there. Sign up for our email newsletter. If you subscribe to the list, you can get email communications from me about what's going on in the vineyard. And yeah, you'll definitely learn more about us that way. And our contact info is up there too, if you ever want to chat.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate catching up with you and hearing about what you're working on. It's so cool.
Yeah, so great to chat with you too, as always.
Yeah. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you will share this episode. I hope you found something really special in it. And I wanted to give you a quick update on some things that are going on with Sarah. So she's been experimenting with growing her wine business, and a couple of things that she's found that work really well are going to events and telling her story. And part of that story is leaving corporate and building this vineyard. Now, as you heard in her story, that wasn't completely her plan to unfold the way it has unfolded, but she said that so many people have been inspired by the story, they're also itching to leave corporate, which I know is not a surprise to you. But she also said something else that's working is having these private events where she's doing tastings at people's homes. And from those events, she's getting people to buy wine and also sign up for memberships. So if you're thinking about how you can go out on your own, regardless of what it is, think about incorporating some of the strategies that Sarah shares. I also loved, as a mom, the tidbits that she shared around getting your kid interested in investing and saving. So I am doing that with my kiddo now. Again, like, subscribe, share, and I will see you next week for the next episode of 101 Ways Out. Talk to you soon.